What if fat was just a word and not a weapon? Today, we're chatting with Leigh Carron all about her powerful journey to destigmatize language and celebrate bodies of all sizes. Listener discretion is advised. This podcast contains mature content intended for adult audiences only. Hello, Leigh. I am so excited to have you on the podcast. If you could just start with telling us a bit about your author journey, I am so excited to hear this.
Thanks. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I've been looking forward to our discussion. So I started with my first book actually was Fat Girl. And it started off as not being a book that I thought I was going to publish. It was just a book where I felt like writing. I always enjoyed writing. And my husband had said, "Hey, you haven't written in so long." And I thought, yeah, I haven't. And life. And so you get busy with other things. And I sat down and I just wrote and wrote like through the night. I didn't even go to sleep. And this story just poured out of me. But I still wasn't thinking about publishing. Then a couple of friends read it and said, "Oh, you should actually do something with this." But I still suffer from the imposter syndrome. But in any case, I let a professional editor read it, and she actually wanted to take it to a traditional publishing route. But I know me, and I know that would never work. I don't like structure. I don't want to be on anyone's timeline. I don't want anyone to tell me what to do. So I knew that wasn't going to work for me, but I was so flattered that was even a possibility. I thought maybe I'll just put it up on Amazon and see what happens. And it was before the plus size fat positive romance really had taken off. And so I knew the name Fat Girl was going to be provocative. And it ended up being, some people were like, "Oh yeah, I want to see what this is about." And other people were like, "What? That's offensive." Right? But that's where I started. And it didn't matter to me about that. For me, it was liberating. That word was liberating for me. And that's the story I wanted to write. And if that works for you, if that resonates, great. If it doesn't, no problem. Don't pick that up. But that's what I wanted to write. So once I did that and I saw, got some traction. But then I went on to the next book a few years later. There was space between because I wasn't really taking myself seriously as an author really until 2022. And then I started to write more. And at that point, the sort of the body positive movement was underway. And my book at that point got a lot of traction and people weren't so offended by the term and people were curious about it. And that's how my journey has been.
I love that. That is so interesting. When did you release Fat Girl?
Originally in 2014.
Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was definitely not at all when there were like one or two influencers that I can think of, maybe around 2016, 17, that were like, in your face, I'm fat, and that's not a bad word. But thinking about 2014, like I cannot even imagine people's responses to it. That's so interesting. And I'm also curious if you had gone the more traditional route, if they would have pushed back on the title.
Oh, for sure, because my editor had already said, love everything about this, like the story is going. But interestingly, what she was suggesting is let's change the title and maybe let's have her at least think about dieting. And then I knew that was out because that's not the story that I wanted to write at all. And so I figured I better just stay on my own and do my thing. Today, I'm sure that would be a different experience, but that's what it was back then.
Yeah, I can imagine. Oh my goodness. Yeah, when we had Amy on, and we'll link to her episode as well. If you guys have not checked out that episode, please do. Yes, it's wonderful. Lots of plus size representation and talking about this in this industry, in the romance industry specifically. She had mentioned that she had read one that had been published around 2014 and just how ridiculous it was, where a lot of negative self-talk. We still see it, maybe not so much in the last 2 years, but certainly books written in 2017, 2018, I would say pre-2020, we definitely saw a lot of books where the attitude was, it's a curvy female main character, but she's doesn't like her body or doesn't love herself or is currently trying to diet or currently trying to change those things to be more attractive to the male main character. And I love that we're seeing that shift. What do you think helped that shift for us?
Well, I think the whole body positive movement, you had a lot of, her name's escaping me, but where she had the beauty standards, and she just came out as this voluptuous model who said, I'm not trying to lose weight. I'm me. And she was gorgeous and just very empowering in that way. And so I feel like it's took off. And sometimes you do need, it's unfortunate to say, but sometimes you do need sort of some celebrity figure or somebody to shape the narrative, to change the narrative. Although there's been so many movements, I'm sure, prior to that. But that's when I remember, for me, that's when it started to, oh, wow, okay, people are really talking about this and changing their language about it. The narrative is changing. And then you start to see it more in media. But we have a long way to go. So don't get me wrong. I'm not in la la land about it, but I have seen the shift, and the shift is great. And I see in the book community, it's amazing. I'm finding so many of my fellow authors who are writing fat romance, and I love to see that in a very positive way.
Yes, in a very positive way. That's always
That's the
caveat.
difference. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That is the caveat.
Yes. I'm even thinking about, I saw someone, I do weight training, and I am not currently using it as a way, like working out as a way to lose weight. I'm considered mid-size. And I was following lots of people who like do weight training and do workouts because I like to see what other people are doing, even though I'm probably never going to do what they do because I have my own thing that I follow and like to do, and like the YouTubers that I like to watch and follow. And all of those ones, the ones that I do follow, their attitudes are, you show up here strong, you show up out there strong. It's about reaching your potential goals, not about, oh, what's your potential weight, or let's lose all this weight, or let's burn all this. No, let's go a little heavier on our weights so we can get stronger. And so I really just love that attitude. But I saw someone, she was a Black woman. She was talking about how she was like in a gym outfit at the gym talking, as people do, I guess. I work out at my house, so I don't know what people do in the gym.
I think they do.
Yeah, just stand there talking to their phone. It's fine. But she was talking about how her doctor said that she was overweight. And she clapped back a bit and was like, actually, it's been proven that, because he was going off of the BMI. And according to that index, it was white men who were studied for that to determine what BMI is. And so you don't have women in there, and you also don't have ethnic diversity in there at all. So no, you should go by what's my waist measurement instead of what the BMI says, because I have different bone structures than my white counterparts. And I thought that was such an interesting thing. And I wish that there was more information like that out there. But I feel like authors like you, authors who have these very positive representations of plus size women, can really help to heal a lot of that external and internal talk that we get about our bodies. So I want to thank you first and foremost for doing that. But I think that what you're doing is such an important thing. So tell us a bit about Fat Girl. What is it about? What can we expect when we check it out?
I'd like to compare Fat Girl, that was my debut, to my curvy rival that I wrote last year, because I think that's an important sort of, like, fat people are not a monolith, right? We're not all the same. We come in different shapes and sizes, and we have different experiences. So whereas Dee, the fat girl in her, was sort of broken, sad, don't feel good about myself. She was abandoned as a child, and she ate to cope, and she had so many issues around food and her body. And for many women, that's real. That really happens, whether you've been in a foster home or otherwise, in terms of those struggles within ourselves. And so that's what she goes through. And so it's a journey for her where she has to come to appreciate herself, to come and learn things about it that have nothing to do with her body, but that end up making her feel good about herself, her body included. But that's a journey. Then we take Jazz, who was in my curvy rival, and Jazz is like, don't be telling me how I need to look. I know I look good. And she's fat. She's also fit. She's fat. She's also a dancer. She's fat. She's also confident. Like those things can coexist. And I think that you were talking about BMI, and I'm going to say FBMI. I don't care if it's on who did it. Let's look at how do you feel? That to me is important. Do you feel good in your body? Can you move the way that's comfortable for you? Those are the kinds of things I think that are more important than some metric that is going to be imposed on you, because no matter what the metric is going to be, it's going to be based on a standard. Always. There's always going to be some standard. And I'm just sick of being compared against something else. So I would not go to a gym that would insist on a BMI. And in fact, in my curvy rival, this is the conflict, right? Because she says, I don't do that. And he's saying, how are you going to possibly coach your clients if you don't know this? And so that becomes her being able to teach him that that's not the only way. Maybe if you care about that, that's fine. No shade, but I'm just saying I don't want that. And I think a lot of women don't want that either. And so we shouldn't have to have that.
Yes, that was honestly when I loved that conflict. It was so awesome because, like, in that one, she's putting flyers near his business and he's like, excuse me, you are a competitor. What are you doing? But then he goes and sees what she's about and he's like, never mind, you're not a competitor. What you're doing is terrible. And she's like, disrespectfully, let me just tell you how I feel.
Exactly.
I love it.
Jazz is such a badass. I loved her. Love her.
Yes. So everybody go read My Curvy Rival for sure. That one's such a good one. There's a sequel to Fat Girl. Is that correct? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. And it's funny because it came 7-8 years later. And people that actually stuck with me, that readers said, yeah, I came back for it. Going, oh my God, I love you. That's amazing. I would have said, well, who's this author again? But anyway, yeah, so that was the continuation of her journey where she really comes into her own, and wherein Fat Girl Mick was really helping to boost her self-esteem. In A Naked Beauty, she does that for herself, and she helps Mick to come along as well, because he has his own trauma and his own things that he goes through. So you see it start to switch where she develops her own strength and her confidence, and he's famous and she has to deal with sort of the paparazzi around that. And oh my gosh, what are people going to say about me and my body out there? She had a lot to deal with. And A Naked Beauty I love the title because it actually came from what I was thinking about, being just naked, just being yourself, where somebody just loves you and accepts you, flaws, everything. It doesn't matter. You can be totally naked with someone and they will love you. And that's what they did for each other. So it took 2 books to get to that journey, but they got there.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
So let's go a little bit back to this word fat, right? In your choice of this word, you could have picked any other word. So why this word specifically? And I know we're starting to see that this fat is not a bad word. It is a fact. It is a part of everyone's bodies. And I use this with my kids a lot because I might say, oh, I got a lot of fat in this part of my body, right? Or like my belly area. And it's because I had you guys. And so my body changed. And so fat deposited here, and that's okay. Or, yes, you have fat on your body. They're 10 and 7. So there's not a lot there at this point. But even like looking at their baby photos, I'm like, look at how chunky and fat you were, in a positive way, not using it as a negative, because fat and how much fat your body has so much to do with genetics. And like you said, trauma, potentially, your relationship with food. And as you were talking about that, it made me think of, I was talking to my kid just the other day. He was like, Mom, why do you eat so fast? And I was like, well, when I was little, I only had 30 minutes to eat. And if I wanted to eat my fill, because I knew when my next meal was coming, because I lived in a cult. So I knew this is when we have breakfast, this is when we have lunch, this is when we have dinner, and this is when snack time is. I don't have any choice over my food or what my options are for food at this point. I'm a child. And if I wanted seconds or if I wanted to fill up because I knew there were hours until the next meal, then I would have to eat really fast in order to be done in time for seconds, the seconds call, and then to be able to eat that really fast. But I only had 30 minutes to eat as much as I could.
That sounds like a whole podcast on its own. This whole cult in eating.
I know.
I'll look forward to that in the future. It sounds good.
I know, right? And so I was explaining that to him, and I was just like, damn, that's messed up. But that's why I struggle with eating really fast. And so sometimes I have to slow down.
Remind yourself.
Remind myself. I have to talk to you guys while we're eating instead of just scarfing my food down and trying to get it down really fast. And then also portioning myself, right? Because whatever portions they gave us, they just filled up the plate. And so I would just try to eat as much of the plate so I didn't have to waste. And they would, this is really crazy. Memories, lovely. When we would bring our trays to the kitchen when we were done eating, if there was, because we didn't dump it out ourselves, we had to bring it. And so if there were a lot of leftovers, say that it was a veggie you didn't like or whatever, you would get a side eye and like, you need to not be wasteful.
Right.
And oh my gosh.
Then you learn you need to clean your plate. You develop those kinds of habits.
Yes. And so now being an adult, I'm being like, great, now I need to unlearn all of these things. But it does have an impact on my relationship with food. So yes, let's get into this word, fat, your decision in choosing that word, and then what you hope that, and we're starting to see it, but what you kind of hope to see with that word, fat, for individuals.
Yeah. For me, growing up, fat was so negative. Nobody wanted to be called that. That was terrible. People could insult you with just that word, bring you to your knees with that. And I knew that I wasn't alone in terms of that there are many women, men too, who experience that. And because I had spent so much of my life with that as this weapon for me, that I decided I didn't want that for me. I didn't want it for my characters. I have a daughter, and I didn't want that for her either. And it makes sense that the reason why we hate this word fat is because it has been used so negatively. Yeah. And so when it's really just a description, but I wanted to take it beyond just the description for it to just be affirming. So you're fat. Okay. We all have fat in our body. Some of us have more than others, and big deal. And so that's where I wanted to come from. Let's not have shame around it. Let's just call it what it is. I'm not opposed to plus size. It's not my favorite term, but I'm not opposed to that. But fat just is the one that I choose. And that's why I put it right on my cover, because I was I'm owning this. And I just think that because it's been the stereotype where fat people have been depicted as lazy, as unintelligent, as undesirable, not lovable, all of those things, that I wanted to say, no, that's just not true. And it took me a long time to get to that place where I could be comfortable. And so I'm not trying to say everybody needs to use the word fat. If that resonates with you, if that's part of your journey, your progress, great. If it's not, if you're not there, that's okay too. But I'm just saying that it's important to me for those reasons to take it back and say, you're not going to hurt me with it. And if you've been hurt by it and you want to take it back too, join it. That kind of thing.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And so now I'm curious, you're in Canada, correct?
Yes.
So I'm curious, I know how it is in the US because I'm born and raised here, sadly. But
at this time, it is a little sad.
It's a little sad, yes. But I'm curious because we talk in pounds and pretty whack sizes here. And so I'm curious what the kind of size industry is like on your side as well.
Very similar. Yeah, very similar that way, where I'd say there's even less options clothing wise. I will have friends who will say, I go to the States for that, for larger
Mhm.
sizes, because it's very European in Canada. So you do have smaller sizes. So it's an issue here too. It's really no different. I lived in the States for a number of years. I'm American by birth, but I've lived in the States, and really, it's not different. What I found different was when my husband and I, sometimes with my daughter, when we've traveled like to the Caribbean, there, the women are much larger, they're voluptuous, they're confident, they're out there in their bikinis with it all hanging beautifully out, and they are not at all self-conscious. They're not wrapping up in their sarongs and stuff to hide it. They are just out there. And so there is a big cultural difference between North America and other countries.
Yeah. I haven't been, but I'm just thinking about the A.H. Cunningham books where I know she is Latinx, but somewhere Caribbean, and all of her characters are big and bodacious and
Hmm,
just like like all these words that are
exactly.
just like, yes,
Yeah,
juicy. I
exactly.
love it.
Yeah, GC, exactly. And that's how it was like in Jamaica. These women were just big and beautiful, and just, it made me feel so confident when I was out there, when I came out, pulling my thing together. Hey, why am I doing that? Why am I trying to hide my body? Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I can think, man, I have such a love-hate relationship with the beach because of that. Either I can never find a bathing suit that really fits me. I want to wear a bikini, but it doesn't hang like it used to.
But that's sad, right? That's sad that we worry about that, because why can't you go and enjoy the beach in your bikini, whether it's hanging, whether it's tight, wherever it is, just go and do your thing. And I remember when I was on this sort of yo-yo dieting thing, where I would always, okay, when I get to this weight, that's when I'll do this. There was so much in my life that was spent when that happens. When I get thin, I'll then be able to really live. That's what it came down to, right? Always waiting for that perfect, that ideal body size that was going to allow me to live, instead of living in the here and now with how I am, because bodies change all the time. I've been thin, I've been fat, I've been all kinds of shapes and sizes, but it's always mattered to me up until years ago about that I always wanted to be that thin person. And I went on my first diet when I was 13.
Ah,
Like, you think 13, that I looked at myself and I didn't like what I saw, and I stopped eating for 30 days. I drank apple juice and orange juice for 30 days. And as I'm going through that, of course, you're losing weight. There's no food, you're going to lose weight. But what was so sad to me now, when in hindsight, was that people would say, oh my God, you look great. And even my family, and we've talked about the sort of healed through this, but even my family was like, like if my child was not eating for 30 days, that would not be okay with me. But they were thinking, well, she does want to get thin, and and we think that would be good if she got thin. And no one stopped me from doing that. And so I did. And the message that I received from that is that it's more important to be thin. The health doesn't matter. Nothing matters but that end goal of getting thin. And that just lived with me for so long. So that's a really hard thing to reframe in your mind when you've had that. And I think not everyone may have had that particular journey, but how many women go through that yo-yo dieting, just always in search of the perfect body?
I cannot imagine my kids doing that and me being okay with it, like, at all. I'm so sorry that you experienced that, and it definitely, I think, is a testament to the time, because I can remember similar conversations with friends who were on the heavier side and were put on diets in their early teens, in the name of health.
Yes, exactly.
And
And love.
I don't know that it was actually the right thing to do at all. Like,
No, it wasn't. I can tell you it wasn't. And I know my family loves me dearly. So this is not a, oh, but people did this out of to be abuse. Some people do that, but that wasn't the case here. It was just through sheer ignorance and a belief that somehow thin will solve all the hurt, will solve all the problems. So it's better. Don't eat for 30 days because at the end of it, you're going to come out better, healthier, happier, all of that, which was just bullshit because that's not what happened at all. It just led to a lifetime of constantly chasing that thinness that became that's been the ideal. Yeah. So I would say anybody who was a teenager and was told they should be on a diet or put on a diet, no, that's not okay. That's not okay for them. It's saying you're not good enough and nobody should be made to feel that they're not good enough.
yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I can think of, I was in my early 20s. So it would have been like before I had my kid. So I had my kid at 21. So I might have been 19 or 20. And I was doing Jillian Michaels. But this is ridiculous. I'd eat whatever like food we had, right? But working out really hard, drinking way too much alcohol. But I would also mix shots of vodka with Baja Blast, Mountain Dew, like a liter of this stuff. And I'd be like 2 shots of that, eating terribly. And I remember my mom, who was a registered nurse, she was like, Alicia, breathe in my face again. And I was like, what? I was just talking to you. What do you mean? She's, no, let me smell your breath. And I was like, does it smell? Like, what are you doing? And she was like, do it. Just do it. And so I did. And she goes, your breath smells like flowers. I think you're malnourished. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm eating and I'm working out and I'm getting fit. And she was like, I don't think you're eating enough. You need to eat more. I was like, how dare you? I'm a grown person. I can do what I want. But I think to have that reflected back, now looking back, I'm like, you dummy. You were not eating well at all.
Good job, Mom. Good job, Mom.
Mom.
Yes.
I know.
Yeah.
But I think that to that point, what I think that romances like yours can do for us is to show that diversity of being fat, that we can be fat and also do other things. A friend of mine said this so beautifully the other day, and I think I wrote it down. I hope I did because it was so good. We weren't talking about being fat. I think she was talking about being queer. She said, being queer is the least interesting thing about me. And I was like, damn, that's good.
Yeah, that is good.
And I was like, you could put that anywhere.
You could put that anywhere.
Being fat is the least interesting thing
That's
about me.
right.
Get to know me as so much more than just that one identity because I am so multifaceted. And so I think that what romances like yours do and similar ones, what they do is they allow us to see ourselves in these books, to heal parts of ourselves. And so I'm curious if you've had any readers reach out to you and be like, you saved me, or anything like that.
I have often, and this is the best part of what I do, when a reader reaches out and says, I feel seen, or this was one of my favorite experiences. I was doing a book club. And so I did a reading from Fat Girl time, and then we had some open discussion about it. And so this one woman talked about the fact that when she was younger, her mother had told her she had fat knees. Okay. And so she was obsessed with her knees, with not showing her knees. She was so self-conscious about her knees that she wore only long dresses, pants, what have you, never any shorts. And we all shared our own similar experiences, but made each other feel like, you're beautiful. You're like, there's nothing wrong with your knees. Show me those knees, girl. And so she was showing her knees. And so about a week later, she emails me a picture of herself where she's out with her short skirt showing her knees. And I thought, I know it's not magic, right? Like, I know these discussions and I know my books and people who are writing books like mine. There's no magic potion. I wish there was, but it's not like that. But if it can at least just make you challenge some of your thoughts, some of the things that you've heard, those negative tapes that sometimes play in our head that tell us we're not good enough, our knees are too fat, our thighs are too fat, our butt's too big, whatever. If we can stop and say, but wait a minute, where does that come from? And what's that based on? And in Fat Girl, actually, in Naked Beauty, when she starts to do therapy, that's what she starts to look at. Where does this come from? And can I reframe it? So if I have a thought that says, my thighs are too big, because that was one of her things, my thighs are too fat. Is there another way to look at it? The opposite is not to say, oh no, my thighs are thin. That's not what it's about. It's my thighs are strong. It's just reframing it so that you start to think of yourself in positive ways. And that's what I hope my book will at least give you pause, let you think about it, challenge it, and maybe that helps you to start towards feeling better about yourself. Even feeling neutral is good. Like, we don't all have to get to self-love, right? That's a lovely goal to get to, but that's not the reality for people. But if we can just at least stop the loathing, stop the negative talk and all of that, and come to a more neutral place, that's immense progress right there.
Yes, I have thighs.
Yeah, there we
The
go.
I have
Lucky me, I can walk because of these thighs and legs that I have.
Yes.
Yes.
It's so true. One thing I always like to remind myself, especially having grown up the way I did, and I get these gut reaction first thoughts that are not always my own. And I have to stop myself and be like, where did that come from? For example, I had a friend say, hey, do you want to do yoga with me? And I was like, yoga's satanic. Wait a minute.
Where did
And
that go? Yeah,
I didn't say it out loud.
because that's what you learned.
Yes. I was like, whose thought is that? Do I know that yoga is satanic? I don't know that. I don't have proof. Let's try some yoga. And so one thing I've had to learn is I'm not responsible for my first thought. And that's also helped a lot with my autistic kid, who his first thought tends to be spiral or everybody's going to die, right? It's very extreme very quickly. And I have to say, all right, then we pause. We say, is that actually true? No. Okay, then what do we do with this information now that we've stopped and paused? And so I think to your point, having these ways to see some of our inner stuff reflected back to us. And that's one thing that I love about romance is I have learned more from reading romance than I ever did reading self-development. Also, it's very difficult to get through self-development books for me. But I have learned so much more about myself and the world that I live in through romance than any other type of book. And so I love that we're able to use this as a tool to, yes, listen or read a delicious love story, but also learn to love ourselves as well in different and deeper ways. It's so beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, I feel that way too. And I just released my new book, An Imperfect Truth, which was exciting for me because that was my first fat male. He's chubby and tattooed and bearded, and he's just sexy and wonderful. And I loved writing that too. And at first I was thinking, will people be okay? Because she's not. She's slender, very tall, willowy body, which is a valid body too. Nothing. It's not like I'm only fat positive. It's like body positive, right? Every body is valuable. So the focus is on him, but he's confident in himself. He had his time in his teens, as most of us do, but he's a confident man, and I don't make the story about that. So I think there's maybe one or two references to it in the entire book, because the point for me is, and maybe it goes back to your friend's point, that's the least interesting part, about him. There is so much more to him, so much more to her as well. And so they're not about their bodies. And I just love telling the story. And he's an amazing character, and I loved writing him. And he has this big, beautiful body to go with his big, beautiful heart. And so, yeah, it was a great.
Yes. Everybody needs to go check out the character art because he's just delicious looking.
Yes, he really is.
Say
He
that.
really is.
I love it. What is next for you? You literally just released a book. So I know you might have some time. I don't think it's going to be 7 more years, but
No, I've been writing a little bit more regularly. Yes, so there's a spin-off now because that series, Perfectly Imperfect, is over with those books. So with Dee and her friends, Jordan and Lexi, that wraps up that series. But I saw an opportunity. I didn't go in there thinking this, but I saw an opportunity to actually do a spin-off because Chaz and Lexi are in this small town and he owns this coffee shop and it's a big part of the story. But the town became a character of its own and Chaz has a group of friends. And so these friends, I started to tell their story and now I need to finish their story and Chaz's sister's story. So the spinoff is coming. The first one will be, I'm not sure when, I'm not going to commit to any date yet, but the first one will be his ride or die bestie, Dice, and another friend of theirs. She is something. Charlotte, but you don't dare call her that. She only goes by Lot. And check out the art on her. She's something. So she is my fat ADHD girly who is she's a player. She's sure of herself. She's a black cat. She has no time for anybody, including Dice, who thinks he's all that. And so it's going to be fun to write the sort of frenemies to lovers that's going to be set in a bar. So I'm literally looking forward to that more to come on that.
Yay! All right. So if people are like, now I need to know more about all of that and I need dates, where can people find you, get to know you, buy and deliciously eat all of your lovely books?
The best place to find me probably is on Instagram. I'm not really on anything else. I can hardly manage myself on Instagram. So that's where I am, at Leigh Carron author. And you can check out my books at my website, which is leighcarron.com. So that's where I'm at. And I promise if you DM me, if you write to me, I answer every message. There's no reader that would go ignored. I love hearing from people. And so I always make a point to connect. That's my favorite part about being an author is connecting with readers. And I think people would say that I'm very accessible that way. I want to be.
Oh, that's so good. And we'll make sure we have links for all of that in the show notes and the description for anyone doing other things or they're like, wait, spell that. We got you. It's okay. It's all right. All the links will be in the show notes, as well as all of Leigh's books that we mentioned here. Leigh, thank you so much. This has been so much fun.
It was wonderful. Yeah, it was a great experience. I appreciate you having me on.